What's up, y'all? William Kurk here with Synth Sounds of again, and today we're going to cover one of the synth pop pioneers from the land of England, none other than Gary Numan. All right, so by 1978, the synthesizers were becoming more common. For instance, you had Genesis, Yes, you had Emerson, Lake and Palmer that were incorporating synths into their sound. They still had that traditional rock bass, like with real instruments, but they were incorporating synth solos and stuff like that. But then you also had synth-centric artists like Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream, and Brian Eno that were doing some very progressive things with synthesizers, but they were not as well known as the rock bands. So, funny story about how Gary Numan came upon the Moog and was like, hey, I can use this to make music. So back in '78, he was recording with his band, Two Boy Army, which was a punk roots band. You got drums, bass, guitar, all the essentials for punk madness. And then in the corner of the studio was a Moog, and Gary Numan just goes to it and starts plucking away at it. And from that moment, his infatuation was sterling for this said instrument, which would become a nucleus to his sound. So on that first album of Two Boy Army's debut, the Moog really was like kind of just like a special sprinkle here and there, really wasn't as prominent. But on the follow-up album, Replicas, dropped in 1979, it was very present. And their first hit from that album was Our Friends Electric. So on this track, we're gonna focus on two synths that were the main source of Gary Numan's heartbeat with synthesizers, which are the Moog Model D and the Poly Moog. Two of a kind, blow your mind. Let's go. The Moog Model D is perhaps the most famous monosynth ever created, used on countless recordings by many artists. And we have a modern reissue on one today, and it sounds fantastic. The other synth Numan used to great effect was the Poly Moog. This is a paraphonic divide down synthesizer, and there are actually two different models. The Poly Moog 203A, or the Poly Moog synthesizer, and the Poly Moog 280A, or the Poly Moog keyboard. The Poly Moog 203A synthesizer came out in 1975. It had 10 preloaded presets, but also had an extensive control panel for customizing and crafting sounds. The Poly Moog 280A keyboard came with 14 preloaded presets, but had a much more limited control panel. This version was less expensive and less customizable, with controls only for octave balance, filter, modulation, and attack. Gary Numan used both Poly Moogs over the course of his career, but most famously, he used the Poly Moog keyboard with the Vox Humana patch to give him that signature sound. Unfortunately, we don't have a Poly Moog in stock, and ironically, there was a person who was gonna loan us one. However, because of the fact that they're unstable and they don't always play, we were unable to use it today. However, we have great VSTs that will give us the same effect using your imagination in our hearts. So we're using the Arturia Selena V with the Arturia V collection, a virtual emulation of the famous ARP Selena string synthesizer, which is a similar synth to the Poly Moog, and it includes the famous Vox Humana patch. And we're also gonna be using the IK Multimedia Polymorph, which includes emulations of the Poly Moog, Opus 3, Moog Rogue, and Realistic Concert Mate MG1. So for this song, as you can notice, the synth part is so unearthly that it welcomes all types of alien-esque species unto the palliation of the mind. So this song features none other than the polymoog, which gives it that super alien-esque malure. Okay, so for this second section, as you can hear, the guitar actually starts the downbeat of this section. It comes in hard, bum, bum, and then you got the synth, right? So you have the polymoog playing the same sound that we were using in the first section. So then we enter in the mini moog Model D, which is filtered down, has some glide on it, and just kind of smooths things out just a little bit, but it still gives it that nice marriage of synth and guitar. And it's a nice little recipe that's happening during this age where synthesizers are starting to become self-aware. So 6 months after the Replicas album drops, Gary Numan breaks away from Tubeway Army, goes solo, and then drops The Pleasure Principle, which would become the hallmark to his signature sound, which replaces guitars with synthesizers, but still utilizes the classic rock elements of drums and bass. So Cars opens up with this sound that mimics to what the imagination might be as an idling car sound. A little quick note about this song, he was inspired to write this while sitting in traffic. True story. So we're going to swap oscillator 3 into LFO mode or low. Then we're gonna make this thing really squelchy by adding a bunch of resonance or emphasis as they call it on the Model D. Lastly, we're going to use a phaser and try to match the rates of the phaser in LFO. So the main riff to this song was created using 2 Model D tracks, one panned to the left, the other one panned to the right, and it gave us this unique stereo imaging sound because they were both kind of slightly different. Both are using pulse width waveforms with each oscillator set to a slightly different pulse width to create some motion. There's also next to no contour or emphasis, and the filter is nearly wide open. And one of the most important qualities of this sound and throughout the album is the MXR Phase 100, which is a guitar pedal, which when you patch it in through the Model D, it gives it this very strong, metallic, gritty sound. So as you can hear, the Model D is unmatched. It has a quality all its own. However, the most daunting thing about the Model D is that it's gonna cost you some bones. 5,000 racks maybe, 4 on a good day. And if you want the vintage stuff, I mean the real quality premium stuff, might even run you a little more. But good news is that we have the cheaper, younger, more vibrant version of that in the form of a grandmother, a Moog grandmother. The Moog grandmother is a monosynth, and it gets us into the ballpark with some really classic Moog sounds. It's also available for under $1,000 used on Reverb, so it's way more affordable. So for the signature lead sound, we're using the Polymoog VST, but we're using the Vox Humana patch, which is the ultimate Gary Numan sound. So we added some modulation and also added some phase, which is also built into the VST sound. So conveniently, we were able to get this nice pre-constructed birthday cake, similar to the ones that you need to get because it's the day of the birthday and you don't have time to put the name on it. So this sound is that birthday cake. You just pick it up and go. Put candles on it, happy birthday. So come with me really quickly as we take a little side quest and imagine a sound of something going, but you don't know what it is. Well, guess what? It might be a snare. Not a snare, a snare. It's a synthesizer that you hit with a stick. I know, the future was really bright back then, but hear me out. What we have here is the Snare 3, and we gotta give a shout out to our boy Joey Roth for letting us hold it down today. It's also possible that the Simmons claptrap was used to make this sound. However, it's just speculation. We don't really know for sure. But we're gonna use the Snare 3 today to give you the Cars party effect. So on the back end of the song, where you have that lead sound being played by the Polymoog, you have another sound that enters, and it's also a Polymoog, but it has a unique phase effect, which in theory could be a Mootron biphase, but we don't know. However, the great news is that by using the Selena V VST, there is a phase built inside of it, and it also has a biphase effect. Next up, we have the song Me, or ME, which starts off with this most awesome, memorable synth line played by the Model D. Unlike the use of the phaser in the previous sample, we're using the flanger, and the flanger that we're using is from the period, so it's gonna be pretty comparable to what could have been used. But for today, we are using the Electro Harmonics Deluxe Electric Mistress. That's a mouthful, right? In addition, we're also gonna be using the Westwood Earthquaker Devices pedal to give us some overdrive, just so that it has some appropriate teeth for the moment. So something worth noting about the newer Model Ds is that it has an external input volume, which is very convenient to get that overdrive effect, which is what we've been using for all these examples. Unlike before where you had to basically plug something into the headphone jack to kind of boost up the drive, now you don't have to do that. There's a knob, and conveniently you can just crank it up and overdrive it as you need it, or dial it back as you don't need it. And lastly, we have Metal, which is a song that also demonstrates the awesomeness of the Model D in its glory, as Gary uses it throughout most of the album, if not all the album. And more importantly, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? So Gary, he's got a sound, he's got a style, and with that sound that he's using throughout all of the songs, it just works. I mean, if you're gonna run a triangle offense, just run it till you win championship. And that's what Gary was doing with this Model D sound. right, before I leave you guys, I have to make a confession. This is a very serious one, so don't judge me. I honestly thought that much of these songs that Gary Numan dropped was done in the 80s. And I seriously thought Cars, of all the songs, was definitely the 80s, but no, 1979 was the year most of this happened. And I just want to say that even I have been humbled in this exploration of Gary Numan's great body of work as a patriarch of the synth pop tapestry. So without further ado, we wish you adieu, and please come back and visit us sometime. Check out the synths on Reverb, as we have plenty of synths to entertain you with. And I'm William Kurk with Synth Sounds of, and adios.